Hi, this is Andrew Connell with Critical Path Training, and in this session we're going to talk about the ECMAScript Client Object Model inside the Client Object Model module. So, what we now have, just like the .NET Client Object Model and the Silverlight Client Object Model, we now also have a ECMAScript version, or a JavaScript version as some people would like to think of it. What this is going to be is, this is going to give us the ability to work on the client after a page is loaded directly with SharePoint, keeping us from having to do any kind of page postbacks and stuff, which would be nice. It doesn't allow me to go through and to write from one site to another one, though. That would be considered cross-site scripting, and as we all are very familiar with, that's a big no-no in the web. So the way this is implemented is through a JavaScript library called the sp.js library. So what you're going to have to do is, inside of your custom ASPX page, or like if you were going to do this inside of a web part, you would have to add a script link control to the page that registers the sp.js file. Now, Microsoft, what they've done is they've crunched this file down, or memified, or whatever you want to call it. They've crunched this file down to be as small as it can possibly be, so that the load time and the wait time for the user is very small, or as small as it could possibly be. If you need to go through and to get and to look at the client object model implementation, see some of the methods for some reason, everything is well documented in the SDK, but if you need to see the source of the JS file that's actually coming down to troubleshoot something or something in your code, there is an uncrunched version. It's the sp.debug.js file, and you can tell SharePoint that I want to load that one by just saying the script mode is equal to debug, and that would reference the sp.debug.js file. Although you want to make sure you don't do this in production. You want to use the crunch file for performance reasons. Now, the ECMAScript Client Object Model is different in, like I've already mentioned one way, but there's two ways. The one way is that you can't talk to different sites. You're talking to the site that you're currently on. So I can't load up a page in the intranet.contoso.com site and then have it talk to the extranet.contoso.com site. I can't do that with ECMAScript. I can do that with Silverlight, though, but I can't do it with ECMAScript, because Silverlight is actually a real program that's running on the client. Now, that's one difference. The other big difference is that method signatures are going to be a little bit different. And this is just because the whole ECMAScript and prototyping and creating object-oriented thing, going with an object-oriented approach in scripting, that just the syntax is just a little bit different from what we have in a managed API. So you just have a little bit of parity here between the two. But it all works the exact same way here. So you see here in this little picture here, what we've done is I have a reference to, first of all, the script link control, and that's telling us that I want to go through and include the JavaScript client object model on the page. I'm then going through, and in JavaScript, I have a function called the exec_client_om. What he's doing, he's first going to go through and get a reference to the current context. There's one of the examples I told you about. Actually, there's two of the examples you can see right there. Whereas first, I'm getting a client context, but I'm not passing in a URL. It's going to assume the current site. And then I'm also having to use this .get_current method to say, give me the current context. I'm then going to go through, you can see how I'm getting the current SharePoint site, or the web, the top level site there. And then I'm saying I want to go through and load this guy. So you can see the little bit of difference here. The syntax is a little bit different, but the steps that you're going to go through are the exact same here. So in this case, I'm just going through and getting a reference to all the lists, and then I'm passing in, asynchronously, I'm passing in two delegates to say, I want you to go run these methods either on success or on failure, okay? So let's take a look at this in a demo. Okay, so in this demo, I'm going to show you how to work with the ECMAScript Client Object Model in SharePoint 2010. So what I have here is a standard SharePoint project that I've created in Visual Studio 2010 using the new SharePoint development tools. And I've created two application pages, Client OM1 and Client OM2. So we're first going to look at Client OM1 for a second here. So what this guy is, there's nothing really fancy here. The only thing that I want to point out here that's different, we have this script link control that I'm referencing the sp.js library here, that I'm going to need that guy. He's the one that's going to go through and contain the client object model for ECMAScript. The next thing I'm going to do is I have a method here that I've created called exec_the_client_om. What he's doing is he's first getting a client context, getting a reference to the current site that we're in, loads up all the lists for the current site, and then he's going to pass in, he's going to say, go ahead and execute the query, and when you've executed the query successfully, to go through and to pull that information back, then I want you to run these two little delegates here, these run little methods on success, and on failure. And if I look at the onSuccess method, I'm just going to go back and write out what the title of the site is and how many lists are in the current site. If it failed, well, I want to write out the failure, but hopefully we won't see the failure. And then I'm going to kick off my JavaScript method by just calling this execClientOm1 or execClientOm method. So if I go look at the code that I've already deployed here, I've gone through and we see a standard application page. If I click execute ClientOm, we'll see that very quickly it went back, hit the site real quick, fired up the client, the WCF service, and then got the information back by running our script. The other option that I have here is I'm sure that people working on the client with JavaScript are probably thinking, well, can I do this with jQuery? The answer is yeah, of course you can. So I'm going to come over here and look at the ClientOm2 file, and I've added in a couple other things here for to get jQuery to work, as well as some custom styles. And what we're going to do is create this little accordion. So I'm going to get it's going to show me a list box of all the lists in my SharePoint site. So if you look down here in the UI, I'm going to have a list box and then an accordion div control. Now my list box, what's going to happen is if I look at the JavaScript and I'm going to register using this SP body onload function names, I'm going to push a method called initialize, so that when SharePoint's loaded, I then want it to run my custom JavaScript called initialize. That is then going to come in, get a client context, look at the current site, look at all the lists, and then do the same thing we did in the last demo, where on success I want to run something, on failure I want to run something else. So if I look at the success one, it says go ahead and load this list box. And then all this is doing here is basically walking through, using the client object model, to get all of the different items out of the collection of lists that came back to me. And then using just standard jQuery syntax here, I'm going to go through and add some stuff to my list. I then have gone through inside my list, and I'm going to register a little function here that's going to go through and say on select change, and it's going to say that when I go through and change the selection, I want to go through and build this table inside the accordion. So what is that going to do? It's easier just to see it. So I'm going to go through and go to my ClientOm2 page. When this guy loads, well, looks like my URL is a little off, so go through and change ClientOm2. The initialize method ran, gives me a list of all the different lists in my site. Well, I know that my large list is there, so I'm going to pick large lists, and what you'll see is the jQuery create this little accordion control right below my list box that's got my large list. And then if I click on other items here, I click on master page, reporting metadata, and as I click these different things, you can see where I could have added additional methods here that would show me all the contents of these lists here, just using jQuery. So in this demo, what you saw is how to use the ECMAScript client object model, as well as the fact that you can also leverage something like jQuery inside of your inside of SharePoint very easily today.